Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest installment of the awesome speaker series. My name is Özgürcan Seçkin, or Oscar, and I'll be one of your co-hosts today. Before we get started, I'd like to talk about our observatory a little. So, for those who are learning about us for the first time about the observatory on social media. It's an interdisciplinary research group that is interested in all things at the intersection of media, technology, with a focus on social media. We conduct rigorous academic research, build analytical tools and software for both scientists and journalists. And we work to educate the next generation of computationally skilled media professionals. We encourage you to visit our website to learn more about our latest research papers, tools, or anything else. You can see it here. So, as a part of the observatory's interdisciplinary mission, we have organized the awesome speaker series virtual event. And the event consists of a series of talks from some of the brightest researchers in the world who are working to understand how social media, the internet, and the technology impact the world. So please make sure that you check out the event page on our website, that the URL on the screen again, for more information on past and future talks. If you find the topic of this talk interesting, I'm sure you'll be interested in the upcoming events. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mirta Galesic. Mirta is resident faculty at the Complexity Science Hub in Vienna, Austria, and external faculty at the Santa Fe Institute, external faculty at the Vermont Complex Systems Institute, UVM, and an associate researcher at the Harding Center for Risk Literacy. She studies how dynamic interactions of individual cognitions, social structures, and emerging problems produce complex social phenomena. Her projects focus on developing models and empirical paradigms for studying various aspects of collective adaptation, including social judgments, social learning, collective problem solving, belief dynamics, and network change. And I'm sure most of people are super interested in all of these topics. Today, Mirta will discuss the dynamics of belief networks. I'm super excited. So before we start, I'll remind everyone of the typical structure. So the structure is this. Presentation will last about 40-45 minutes. Questions at the end. We have 15 minutes for them. So please feel free to leave the questions in the chat or save them to ask later. So I'll now ask that we welcome Mirta. So if I can see your Zoom hands while we switch the screens. So Mirta, you can take it away.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm super excited to be here, kind of. At least virtually. I'd love to visit as soon as possible. You're amazing. I love Indiana University. I think the departments there are, and the researchers there are, in my view, the best in the US for at least the kind of science I'm interested in and trying to contribute to. So thank you so much, everyone. Just see, okay. So today I'll dare to talk to this highly educated group about dynamics of belief networks, some work that we did also thanks to these various funders, and just recently canceled NSF grant, as many of us. And so the beliefs are, of course, important because they affect individual and collective outcomes, our actions, our what we do, how we organize ourselves. And so we are more generally in our group in Vienna interested in collective adaptation, and this is how groups adapt to different problems, and one important aspect of collective adaptation is forming beliefs that are understanding what are the important problems that need to be solved, and forming beliefs that are comparable to those of others, so that we can collectively organize. And so we are interested in this problem of belief dynamics in general. And I should say first, as a clarification, that we use the term belief very broadly. We encompass various conceptualization of beliefs, from various assumptions about state of the world, views and opinions on moral and political issues, cognitive aspects of attitudes. There are so many, like you can call it attitudes, beliefs, opinions. There are so many ways, and different disciplines and different parts of disciplines, people are operating in different ways. We just call them beliefs. because we feel that many of these concepts, many of these constructs are actually formed and updated in a similar way through interactions of other beliefs and these cognitive constructs within individuals and also between individuals. And in one paper that we try to provide an overview of various belief dynamics models, we kind of see it as an individual has a network of beliefs in their head, and they are also related to a social network. And in this social network, everybody has their own beliefs. And then somehow an individual forms a representation of their individual beliefs and the social beliefs around them. And based on that, experiences a certain dissonance. And based on that, they can either update their beliefs or update their social metrics. So it's kind of the general framework. And so here I want to first talk, kind of take a step back and think a little bit of how we model belief dynamics. Many of us are interested in belief updating. So how do we model that? People are actually using different analogies to construct these models. And we feel that we need to be aware of what we are using before we overstep and project too much from our analogies to what's actually happening. Then I'll introduce, and many of you already know about this model, so networks of beliefs. That's our basic model. And then I'll present an extension where we model how links between different beliefs in this network are updating. And then I'll show an ongoing work in our lab on measuring belief networks, from collective belief networks, from online comments data to different ways to measure individual belief networks. So first, this kind of step back. During my time at the Santa Fe Institute, now at the Complexity Science Hub in Vienna, we are surrounded by different, very interesting scientists, and we are constantly borrowing from different disciplines, some models, frameworks, templates to model belief dynamics. So similarly, like we use analogies in real life all the time and in science to understand things that we have less knowledge of based on things that we have more knowledge of, like we used computers to understand the mind. Now we use the mind to understand the computer. Before, Bohr's model of atom was using solar system to kind of make sense of it. And eventually all of these analogies break. Of course, no other system is exactly similar as the system that we want to study. And so the trick is to recognize, we think, in when the analogy actually breaks. So when we look at the analogies for modeling belief dynamics, these models come from are inspired by many different other fields: epidemics, epidemiology, epidemiological models. Those are classic SARA and so on models. Models of ferromagnetism, that's something that we use, a lot of statistical physics models. Models of forces, especially in the older kind of psychology literature, but having a comeback. Evolutionary models, stress code models, and then models inspired by some statistical procedures such as regression, Bayesian inference, and so on. And so all of them are bringing us something to understand about belief dynamics, but they also have some conceptual baggage. For example, epidemiological models. Here, transmission of belief is equated to transmission of disease. And this is nice because it's very simple. And one can make these different analogies of processes and concepts like susceptibility, exposure, infection, contagion, and then help us think how beliefs spread in the network. And then going to construct in simple and easy models that are then applicable to a wide variety of network structures. The baggage is that then it assumes that belief is implicitly, tacitly, one can start believing that belief is really quite like disease. It's in some way it is, but also, for example, we would assume that if I encounter some information or something enough time, eventually I will get infected and I will get a disease. But we know that, especially when it comes to misinformation or some highly entrenched political beliefs, that this is not the case. There are people who are, it's really hard to change their belief, and we all have such beliefs that are difficult to change. So there is at some point this analogy breaks down. When it comes to ferromagnetic models of belief dynamics that we all know and love, these are different statistical physics models that assume that a belief or a person is like a particle that has an attitude that points either up, down, or in different directions, and then the system wants to minimize the energy by aligning all of these as much as possible in the same direction, and also sometimes also updating the links between them to minimize the energy. And that's really nicely mapped to all cognitive dissonance literature in psychology. So energy could be understood as dissonance. The temperature, which is important in these models, is some kind of attention to dissonance. So we all have many different beliefs. but we don't often pay attention to how dissonant they all are. Sometimes we pay attention and then we actually update in the way to minimize this dissonance and so on. But the baggage is that it assumes that this reduction of dissonance is the main motivation for belief change. And I myself use these models now for so long that I almost believe that this is completely true. But maybe it's not true. Maybe dissonance reduction is actually not motivating belief change in at least some situations. Sometimes we like to keep the dissonance, the tension. Like especially we, like in science, we are deliberately trying to keep the dissonance going because we want to be alert to various different interpretations of the things that we are observing. Or it could be that dissonance is there is no process such as dissonance, but people just copy whatever their leader is saying or whatever their best friend is saying or thinking. And so one needs to be alert to this, to not go too far with that analogy. Or we all know and love threshold-based models of belief dynamics. These are great because they can reproduce a number of different phenomena we observe in the real world by just a change of this threshold parameter. How likely is the time copying somebody else, depending on the similarity to this other person. And then we can have anything from complete fragmentation of society to consensus. But however, this is in a way, it's just basically slamming a parameter on a rich, probably array of psychological processes that are determining what this threshold is. So it's not explaining why we have different thresholds. It's not predicting why would we have different thresholds in different situations or for different beliefs. It just assumes that this threshold is there. And in this way, it stinks a little bit of personality traits, which I'm a psychologist, so of course many of us live of personality traits, but we're also very suspicious about them because they really are. The human behavior is actually very situation specific, and this kind of general level explanations can only take us so far. And then, okay, so I will not, spend too much time on these analogies, but I just want, like, whatever I say also, and I think it's important to have this critical mind and think, where did I borrow this model from? And to what extent it can lead me astray. When I should stay alert to introducing some assumptions that might not be true. So that's that. And now I want to introduce you to our kind of baseline model of networks of beliefs that we did with Jonas Dalege, who was our postdoc and a very talented researcher who is now in Amsterdam, and Henrik Olsson, main collaborator. And so, as you all know, there are many different models of belief dynamics, and many models actually study how one belief spreads in social networks. That's, I would say, a majority of models. Those are these epidemiological models, stressful models, various things, also a lot of ferromagnetic models. It's basically how this orange belief is spreading in a social network. But then, in contrast to these kind of belief dynamics models, there are many models like semantic memory and epistemic knowledge in psychology that are based on the idea that there are networks of concepts in people's minds. And these models are typically studying how these beliefs and concepts interact within a single mind. But what we really want to know is how do these networks of beliefs, of concepts that people have in their heads interact in social networks. That we believe is a kind of holy grail. It would be really nice to understand how beliefs interact with other beliefs in the head and with other beliefs in the social networks. How do we go about that? And of course, this is not a novel idea. There are other people thought about this, and there are many promising models, starting from older cognitive science work by Schultz and Lepper on constraint satisfaction models. Then our own Jonas Dalege worked in a group where they produced this causal attitude network model. Brandt and his collaborators are having also interesting models of belief networks. Maddalena Vlasiano, Alan Coman, and their collaborators have this nice multi-level model of belief networks, which they differentiate between different kinds of belief networks. Your own YYN has this fantastic model where they really connect not only belief networks, but now they connect them with social networks, and they have different updating processes on different levels and produces very nice predictions, since it's really nice. And then there are other work that Schweighofer that uses the weighted balance model, which explains polarization of opinions. And then a dynamic system model by Biziaeva, which is actually very similar to our model and Naomi Leonard, but it's a dynamical system model. Anyhow, so what we feel is still missing. It's coming, but we still need more of these models, like YYN model, where we have integration of social and belief networks. And also we need empirical tests. We really need to measure these belief networks and see how they actually update. And so in our own attempt of a model that integrates these different things, we assume that there is some kind of social network, and then each person in the network has their internal belief networks. And then we distinguish between two types of beliefs. One is personal beliefs. So let's say that the focal concept, the focal belief that we are interested in is climate change. And so we can roughly divide the beliefs that we have about climate change in kind of more personal beliefs, which are not social, which are about like, well, how does the climate change come about? So scientific facts about it, economic facts about it, political beliefs related to climate change. And then we have also social beliefs, and these are beliefs about what other people around us think. So that's our perception of other people's beliefs. And then the connection between two people is here extremely simplistic in this model. And it is just basically the correlation between what I think another person thinks and what that person actually thinks. That's all. So there is no liking, there is no, I don't know, some kind of similarity or anything between us. It's just this, how accurate my beliefs are about that person. That's the link between. And so this is a super minimal model, and want to see how far we get in explaining various phenomena. And the updating processes here are based on this theory of cognitive dissonance. That's very old theory in psychology. And the idea is that depending on the felt dissonance in these different parts of these networks, beliefs will get updated. And so to formalize this, we use a statistical physics model. So beware, it's an analogy. And so here's how. Let me first introduce some visual notation. So let's say that personal beliefs are squares and social beliefs are triangles, and everything together fits in a circle that's an individual mind. And then these circles are then related to each other. And with these links, which I explained, are just basically the correlations between perceived and actual beliefs. And now we introduce some standard statistical physics notation. So we have these BIs, our personal beliefs. And there is, so BI is the belief that we are actually interested in as researcher, or something that people are actively discussing. That's our focal belief, we call it focal belief. And then BJs are various other beliefs that people have about this issue. And then they're all related to certain links, these omegas. And then there is, everybody also has these social beliefs. Of course, one can have many social beliefs, as many people, as we know, or other groups. Here we have only one, this triangle. That's the social belief about the belief of this other person, and which is related with this link alpha to this other actual belief of the person. And now here are personal beliefs or social beliefs and our external beliefs. Okay, so updating is very simple. First, we recognize that one can have a potential dissonance. There can be a disagreement between beliefs that people have, and we differentiate between three types of these potential dissonances. We find that fruitful. So one is like the dissonance between these personal beliefs, so between my focal belief about climate change and various other science and economic beliefs about climate change. And then another is social dissonance. This is a disagreement between what I think about climate change and what I think my friend think about climate change. And then we have this, what we call external dissonance, which is a disagreement between what I think my friend thinks and what the friend actually thinks. And depending on the tension to personal, social, and external dissonances, we will feel a dissonance. So as I said, we all have hundreds of beliefs in our head. We don't go always around and try to minimize the dissonance on all of them, but we pay attention to some parts of it, depending on what we are asked about, what is being discussed. And depending on this attention, then we assume that people will try to minimize dissonance in these different parts. So sometimes we will pay more attention to the personal dissonance. Sometimes we'll want to be more true to ourselves. Sometimes we'll pay more attention to the social dissonance. For example, when we're in a novel social situation and we want to kind of fit in. Sometimes we'll pay attention more to external dissonance, especially if we hear our friends actually talking about climate change. Then, oh, I thought they were thinking something else. So that's the way that we can start paying attention to external dissonance. And then based on that, there are two updating functions. One is to update personal beliefs based on the dissonance that we experience between the focal belief and the other personal beliefs, and the focal belief and the social beliefs. And the other is updating of our social beliefs. So we can also, we might think that everybody else thinks something else, but that causes us dissonance. So we can then update these social beliefs so that we start believing more like ego projection, like, maybe everybody is similar to me. Or we can also kind of disregard what we hear that other people are actually saying. So a politician makes a racist joke and we say, they were just joking. They were not really racist, in some way disregarding the information about the actual person. So then we have these two updating functions, and based on that, in every time step, beliefs are updated. And so the main this is a very simple model and very abstract, but we wanted to see whether some basic model assumptions and predictions hold in actual empirical data. So we conducted two studies on mechanical Turk and longitudinal on this more representative Understanding America panel, where we had both participants and their friends, and we asked people about their beliefs. So we asked about their focal beliefs, which was GM food and vaccination, and then various personal beliefs, which we constructed in a quite elaborated way, but we have various personal beliefs that we thought were related to the GM food after different pretests. And then social belief we just ask people, okay, think about contact, whatever, and then we ask them, okay, what do you think this contact thinks? And then in this panel, we have two waves with participants and their friends, we ask them about that actual friend. And then based on that, we could construct networks on this group level, on the level of the whole sample, where links are correlations between these items measuring different beliefs. And then we can see that there are different clusters for these personal or here moral beliefs and social beliefs. But then importantly to us, we also wanted to measure this attention to dissonance, because that was the main thing which kind of prompts the updating of the potential dissonance, updating of the beliefs to reduce the dissonance, where the potential dissonance becomes felt. So we wanted to see, can we measure this? Because of course it would be relatively easy to fit these models post hoc, but we were like, can we ask people about how much attention they pay to these different parts of their networks, their belief networks, and predict what parts of the networks are they more likely to then adjust. And so we, after a lot of back and forth, we zeroed in on batteries of 3 items for personal, 3 for social, 3 for external. And examples of items are for personal dissonance, it's important to me that my beliefs are not in conflict with each other. Social, that the personal beliefs and beliefs of friends are not in conflict. And external, that what friends thinks about GM food is actually that I know. Okay, and so now we then test whether some predictions from the model we actually see in this real world data. So one prediction of the model is, and that's not only our model, that's actually predicted by other models as well, that if you start paying high attention to your beliefs, then beliefs tend to become more polarized, more extreme, either in one or the other direction. And so the hypothesis here is that when people start paying attention, a lot of attention to their beliefs, then they will become more extreme. And this is actually, we see an indication of that in our data, because in our survey, when we divide people in 7 categories by the importance they give to different to the dissonance between their personal beliefs, then those who assign higher importance to this dissonance also have a bit more of a kind of bimodal belief distribution. And we see something similar when it comes to social dissonance. Here, the prediction is that if we don't pay much attention to the dissonance between our beliefs and beliefs of friends, then we can allow that different friends have different opinions from us, and it doesn't bother us much. But once we start paying attention to it and dissonance increases, then it bothers us that our friends are different than us, and the result would be that we want to adjust these social beliefs to be more similar to our own beliefs, thus also reducing the variance between our different contexts in their in our perceived social beliefs of them. And this is also what we see in our data. So this is again people divided in 7 groups by the importance of social dissonance. And then we see that those who pay more attention to social dissonance are actually having lower variance of social beliefs, and those beliefs are more similar to their personal beliefs. Okay, so there's that. We have other predictions. I will kind of skim through this because then we show how we can explain polarization through this and some other phenomena. And okay, it's a promising model, but as I said, it's extremely simple. It's stripped of any kind of realism except for these personal, social, and these felt dissonance aspects. And we were wondering, well, this needs to be improved. Like, what next can we do? And so one obvious thing is that the links are not changing here. So here in this model, the links between the beliefs are static. It is as if it's only the belief nodes that are changing. And that bothers us because, of course, you know, climate change was not always related to politics and so on. So obviously beliefs about different issues, the relationships change over time. And so we wanted to incorporate that. Then we also wanted to incorporate expressed beliefs and also include some more socio-psychological processes such as ego projection, authenticity, conformity, those kinds of things. And then we wanted to also compare predictions of different models. And that's a different study that I will not show now by Filippo Zimmaro and Henrik Olsson. And then finally, we also want to measure these belief networks on collective and individual levels. So I will now first show our attempts to model this change of links. This is led by Peter Steiglechner, who is a postdoc at our lab, and he's amazing. And so he just basically implements a very simple assumption of Hebbian learning, Hebbian-inspired kind of edge updating, where 2 beliefs will increase the strength of their link if they change together in the same direction. And otherwise, if they change in opposite or in different directions, then the link will decrease. And then there is some decay. So that's a pretty standard Hebbian learning paradigm with modification. Anyhow, so now we can compare what happens if we have this old model with fixed links. This is now a simulation where 100 agents starts from focal belief from -1 to 1. They are embedded in a simple social networks. They are connected maybe to 10 other agents. They all have 10 other beliefs, and there is a relatively strong attention to dissonance. And over time, at least in this particular run, they all go to one or the other limit. As I showed before, they kind of become more extreme in their beliefs. Now, what happens when we have these adaptive links? And this is more interesting because not everybody goes, this is still a single run, not everybody goes into same direction. Some stay towards -1, some to 1, some are somewhere in between. And so when you look at all of these different runs, then you see that with fixed networks, they all converge either to like one extreme or the other. But with adaptive networks, we actually have kind of stable disagreement. There are configurations, there are runs where we have people who stay with their initial beliefs in between. That's interesting. But then we thought, oh, how would it affect interventions? You know, we are all wondering why is it so that sometimes it's so difficult to change people's minds. We invest so much in science education, but it's so hard to convince people, especially if these beliefs are somehow entrenched in the network of other related beliefs. Could this model help us understand why are some belief systems more difficult to change, and why are some particular beliefs more difficult to change? And we think that it can start helping us with this. Here we just introduce an external field, if you wish, like a very strong influence from some commercial or influencer is trying to pull everyone towards +1. And so we simulate this. We have time from 0 to 100. And so for the first 100 steps, nothing happens. Then there is intervention for 50 steps. And then we evaluate what happens at the 200. And so here again, this is the fixed network. In the fixed network, most people just update. So they go in the direction of intervention. It's a very strong field. And this is not something that we see in the real life, usually. What we see more is this, what we see in adaptive linked network. Again, this is a very strong intervention, but now we see some people who actually do not change. And now we can look at, actually, we discovered there are 3 different types of agents that could be interestingly studied. One are these compliant agents, and you can see their network on the right. They take this, they are influenced by this commercial, and they just stay convinced even after commercial is gone. Then we have this, what we call resilient agents. So they are also influenced by the commercial, but then after the commercial is gone, they change back. And then we have this, what we call resistance agents. They are like, nope, they are not changing. And again, the exact proportion of how many we will have will depend on the strength of the commercial. And so, okay, so now what? So now, as you see, there are these different networks. And so now the holy grail would be to understand what are some properties of network structure of these agents before the intervention that might help us understand whether they're going to change or not when the intervention comes. And this is work in progress, but this is one of our kind of initial findings. This is now regression analysis where we put in different properties of social network structure. And these are on the x-axis. So, okay, we are controlling for the focal belief before this external pressure, before this commercial. Then we have number of social contacts. They vary a little bit from like 5 to 15. We have strength of connections of the focal belief. So how well is the focal belief entrenched, connected to other beliefs? Then we measure this concept of balanced triads around the focal belief. So how often is focal belief embedded in triangles that are balanced rather than imbalanced? And then how cluster is this belief network? And we also measure various other things, but this is now focusing just on the structural aspects. And then in each of these shadings, we have results for different levels of this commercial different pressure. So pressure 1 is basically almost very, very, very low influence, and pressure 16 is very strong. And we have the size of these regression coefficients on the y-axis. And now what we see is that, of course, if the focal belief before the pressure is a little bit more negative, then it will be harder to pull people up to the more positive side. But what is interesting is that first on the right-hand side of the figure is that when the focal belief is better embedded with other beliefs, is a member of more balanced triangles, then it is more likely that the person will be resilient or resistant rather than compliant. Or if the belief network is more clustered, so more better integrated, then it's more likely that the person will be more resilient or resistant to this agent. In contrast, the fewer social contacts people have, the more likely they're to be resilient or resistant, because this network is quite well connected. So as other people are getting influenced by the commercial, this is not going to affect this resilient or resistant ones if they have a lower number of contacts. So as I said, initial results, but we are kind of, this is interesting. It seems that those networks that are more resilient and resistance are characterized by less balance, more clustered network, and fewer social contacts. And we feel that this could provide an overall explanation, or at least a set of hypotheses for why some beliefs are more or less likely to change. So this is now a structural explanation for the difficulty of belief change, which has a potential to go beyond, somewhat circular explanations such as, oh, well, they're religious, they will never change their belief, or they are very lefty, or something like that. But it goes purely on the structural level. So that's this line of research. And now the holy grail is, okay, that's all great, but are there belief networks? And how do we even measure them? And that's, of course, it's very difficult. Typically, this was done with survey questions where I construct, as I showed you before, I construct a questionnaire. There are 20 questions. You answer these questions. And then on a group of 100 people, I can calculate correlation between these questions, and I can draw a network. But that's a group level network. It's very likely that individual networks are very different than that. And also, the problem with predefining a fixed number of questions is that I'm also a survey researcher by heart. Even if you ask people about things that don't exist, they will form a belief and they will say something, and then they will think that they had this. Next time they will be able to reproduce this belief. In a way, by asking people about different things, we are making them form beliefs that they didn't even have before. So that's the problem with this. And then also by predefining the questions and the specific number of questions, we are masking the differences in how many beliefs different people have. I mean, some people have very nuanced and very large set of beliefs about some topics, and others have none or two. And so we are losing this individual level variability if you are going with pre-designed questionnaires. And then, as I said, it's typically done on the population level. And then there are, of course, individual level methods, but they do require quite a significant investment. So probably the best ones are pairwise comparisons, but it quickly explodes this number of these pairs. And also, there are also longitudinal measurement of beliefs over time. So some researchers are doing also in Amsterdam, they're doing these great surveys where they ask multiple times people about their COVID beliefs or other beliefs over time. And then they are able to have some analysis of strength of links between different concepts on the individual level. But that requires that those beliefs actually change over time. And as we know, many beliefs don't even change over time. So then you can't calculate this co-occurrence. Anyhow, so we are looking at different ways to measure these beliefs. And I will just skim briefly through it, but it's a great work by Sung-Woong Ha. Please hire him, postdoc from the Santa Fe Institute. This is enormous analysis of millions of comments posted over 8-9 years on 5 different news sites in the US, from very left to very right. And so he does enormous like big topic models, and also constructs the whole kind of digital twin of these platforms, where now he can investigate how different interventions affect the dynamics of comments on these platforms. And all of that is like a big work. And it produces these kinds of networks, which are very interesting and can be then studied how they change over time. This is now networks of topics discussed on different sites, and they vary. They change from month to month, from week to week, and many different things can be then inferred from that. One can compare also for particular topics, how they are discussed on left-wing sites and more right-wing sites. And that's all interesting, but it's still group level. So we still don't know how individual beliefs change. Here is where Daniele Barolo, a PhD student from our lab, comes in. And he now looks at the same data set, but looks at people who comment. There are some people who comment over years, and they amass like thousands of comments. We thought, oh, let's collect all comments from these users. They're all anonymized, and also they are never connected to any social media data. So we are past ethics. We kind of feel okay with selecting these users and analyzing their comments. So we look at those who have at least 300 articles, at least 5 comments per month. We eventually select 25 users in 3 platforms, Mother Jones, The Hill, and Brightburst, so from left to right. And then Daniela now develops an LLM pipeline to detect topics and stances about these topics, and also validates them in many different ways, has a human label annotations, and he tests many of these different LLMs. And then he gets something like this. I want to show it to you in real time, because I think it's really cool. And this is work in progress now to analyze this. But let's say we look at a particular user from Breitbart. And this is a network of this user. So we see that, let's see. I just selected something, but so here's the gray ones are those that
I don't think
you don't see it?
Yeah, we don't see it.
Oh crap. Okay. But you see this slide, right?
We can see your slide.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So imagine that you can rotate this thing. This is a network. This is actually a network of beliefs of an individual user. It is based on co-occurrences of topics that this person has discussed and had stances about over a period of years. And if the topics co-occur in a particular smaller time period, then we draw a link. And then depending on whether this we assign a positive or negative links based on the semantic analysis of these topics, and then we can draw the whole network and see how it changes over time. And this is our first foray in the belief network of a person. And we find it super interesting. One problem is that these people are those who comment a lot, so they don't change that much. But it's one very interesting thing that we observed, that before Trump shows up, descends the elevator through. Many people, both on left and right, are angry about many different things. And you can imagine just what left people are angry about, what right people are angry about. But then when Trump comes down, all the right-wing commentators, they get not all, but many, they get this central node that is Trump, that is negatively related to everything they hate. And this is so persistent and stays over years. It's really amazing. Whereas on the left, there is no such node. They just hate stuff. But there is nothing to kind of gives them hope that something can actually overcome all this. So we find this interesting. And now we are of course, want to analyze comments of more individuals and more diverse individuals, and then use this data to refine our belief networks models. And the other, this is the last thing I want to show. This is by Victor Poulsen, another of our wonderful PhD students. And he wanted to design a tool where he would actually let people just talk, so that we avoid these fixed questionnaires and let people just talk about their beliefs, guided by an LLM interviewer. And then based on these transcripts, use the real-time just LLM extraction of most important topics that people talked about. This is now this is about meat consumption. Just took that as our first topic to study. And so now the LLM extracts. So first it asks 5 to 10 questions. So we have maybe 200 to 500 words. And then the LLM extracts what were the topic that person talks about. Then we ask the person, well, did you really talk about this? Is this accurate? Some attention checks. And then we ask them, okay, why don't you now draw your own belief network? And so here we have different, so each of these nodes that was extracted now becomes a circle. And then we put the circles on this canvas. And then one can put links between different beliefs to indicate whether they're positive or negative. And I could show you now a video of this, but I think you will probably not see it, but you can imagine people are clicking and connecting these nodes. And then you get a bunch of different networks. These are all individual networks that we get. And now the question is what is this stuff? Isn't it any useful? So now we just conducted a validation study with a larger number of participants in 2 waves, 1 week apart, just to see, is there any consistency here between beliefs networks drawn in 1 week and a week later? Is there any kind of validity here? And so this is now some measures, so that's the reliability of these measured belief networks. So if you look at the number of edges that people drew in wave 1 and wave 2, there is some moderate correlation there. Then if you look at we embed all these different statements that people gave. And so we try to see what is the difference, what is the distance semantically between what people say themselves between wave 1 and wave 2 and what different people say. And so they are more similar to themselves. Great. We are now doing some more topic modeling on that. And then some measures of validity. Do people even recognize their own network? And so we show them their network and we show them some other network, which the nodes are actually in the same positions, but the edges are all manual. And so they do recognize their own network. That's great. And then we also ask them to do pairwise comparison of these beliefs that were extracted. And now we connect it to those that they drew themselves on canvas. And so what do we see? We see that this diagonal so there is a lot of overlaps. There are, I don't know if you see my mouse, but we do have some concerning things. So for example, that in pairwise comparison, people say that they are supporting, that 2 beliefs support each other, whereas on canvas, people draw them as conflicting. We have less on the other side. And then we have, but the most I won't say it's problematic, but it's kind of expected, is that on canvas, people do not draw many of the potential links there, that when you ask them explicitly, they will rate them in some way, often as supporting. This is this 19.7. So now we are still trying to understand, is this missing or is this kind of imposed when we ask explicitly in pairwise comparison, so people feel that they should say something? And so in the next steps, we are now also want to investigate this kind of predictive validity to see, can we predict something about whether the same belief will show up in the next wave, depending on how well connected it was how dissonant were the edges in which the area of the network in which it was embedded. Can that predict something about its appearance in the next wave? And then so now we're in the process of refining this. We are also very interested in seeing, now this is text like 200 to 500 words, where can LLMs recreate this individual belief network so the people don't have to draw them? That would be great, because then we could do belief networks in all kinds of textual corpora. And here are the first results, which I don't know, we are kind of moderately, we are not entirely disappointed. There is some potential here. So we see that there is a there is a concordance between supporting links, so those that are rated supported on Canvas, also rated supported on LLMs. There is a lot of no connection agreement, but then again, as in pairwise, so the LLM estimates support where people didn't put any. And so now again is the question, like were the people just lazy, so they didn't draw these supporting links, or is LLM using some different conceptualization of what's a meaningful link, like a semantic link or something else, which actually is not relevant to people, so they are not coding it, and that's the work in progress. Okay, so just to wrap up, so this whole belief dynamics literature, this whole work is actually part of our broader work on collective adaptation, as I mentioned at the beginning, where the idea is that depending on the problems we are facing, we often restructure our groups and the ways we learn and decide over different temporal and spatial scales. And sometimes we are very good in that, and sometimes we fail miserably, both in our offices and in our families and in our societies. And we want to understand why is this happening, and we believe that understanding belief dynamics is necessary to understand this. So this is kind of the broader aspect of our work. And we are looking at this collective adaptation as an emergent property of this constantly evolving complex system of cognitions, social structures, and problems we are facing. And we are doing different empirical work and also modeling work to understand how this happens. And this is our group in Vienna, and this is our building. And we are all very welcome to come visit us anytime. And this is it. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mirta. We can move on to the question and answer, and we want to see your hands. I guess we can make a queue. I bet there's a billion questions now. It was a lot of stuff to digest.
Sorry.
So thank you so much. And if nobody is going to go first, I would ask some. Oh, okay. Okay, Alex, you can go first.
You can go first if you want. Hi, Mirta.
Alex.
So I apologize because I didn't see all of your talk. I missed the very beginning. I was very interested in what you were saying at the end, and do you or do people know what it looks like what people's belief networks, how do people's belief networks change when they're being deliberative? Because one thing that you were saying, you were looking at these people with lots and lots of comments, right? And that they didn't, and that they therefore weren't changing that much, I think you said. But you could imagine that the people who are commenting are kind of trying to figure stuff out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I wondered if you are there scenarios where we're able to look at belief net? Well, how does, and also, so one just you could also imagine that deliberative thing, people don't change their minds, they're just trying to reach a compromise, but they still believe the same thing. Anyway, that's my question.
That's a great question, Alex. We should study that. I mean, yeah, obviously, like Reddit changed my view or some other such discussions. No, we didn't even scratch that surface. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That would be amazing. Yes, good point.
Yeah, Leon, I think
Hello,
you can go.
Leon.
Hello. Yeah, really nice to hear how things are going with all of your different angles on this. I had a question about so like it's really clear to me that the stuff that you're doing is really cool for finding the belief networks for individuals, and that could be super useful for trying to see empirically how the personal dissonance kind of plays out. If you do this over time. But have you gone even further, I guess, and thought about what kind of data would you need and what kind of procedures would you need to be able to look at social and external dissonance as well?
Right. So what we need is more kind of some data where people are expressing what they think other people think around them, and then also comparable data from other people's beliefs. So So far, we actually, with one of our NSF grants, we really try to recruit both people and their friends. I showed a little bit of their data. It was very difficult. There are also, of course, some other more clever studies of that, but it is a difficult issue, how to both get my perceptions of friends and also at the same time their own opinions. I don't have a good answer to that, but it will be even further. Like, we are now also introducing a concept of expressed beliefs. So we understand that not all, you don't directly perceive my beliefs, you see what I express. And that's another can of worms. How do we then measure expressed beliefs? And of course, one can think of tedious experiments where you kind of put people in different situations and then they signal more or less honestly or express. But it is difficult. I would welcome any suggestions for how to maybe try to extract that from the data we have. Any thoughts? I mean, again, I can think of many tedious experiments, but beyond that, I don't see an easy way, actually, unfortunately.
Lisa, I think you could go next.
Well, thanks so much. This was fascinating. I was wondering, so I really like the work that you talked about at the end, where you've got people talking about their beliefs and then mapping it and comparing that to the LLM. But I'm wondering, so you've got how people think their networks are. You've got what the LLM thinks the network are, but neither of them necessarily have to be accurate representations of what the network actually is. And so I was just wondering how you're thinking about kind of that triangulation and these different aspects.
Yeah, we have a lot of discussions about that. And our best hope is that next, what we want to do is to measure in some way people's beliefs networks and then try to, I mean, Brandt Lab has done it, and try to then make hypotheses based on their belief network structure as measured about which of these beliefs might be more or less easy to change. And then go ahead and try to implement such interventions and see whether this network conceptualization, network measurement actually helps predict what is changing. And that's how we think about it now. Or even in this found data, like this common data and stuff, if we could see that some aspect of network structure in time 1 predicts whether these beliefs are more or less expressed in time 2 or how they are connected and so on, then this would give support to the network idea. But, we also want to remain skeptical about the whole network idea. But that's a different thing. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Christina?
I think you're muted still.
Okay. Was I okay? Christina, I think you can go next. Oh, I think she had a connection issue, maybe.
You're muted.
Yes. You're
You
muted.
appear muted.
Sorry, I was trying to
There you go.
switch my audio. Yeah, thanks. I have many questions, but I'd like to ask two, and I'll ask them together. Hopefully, you can remember both of them. So, in your model, like I wonder, are the belief networks and social networks or social links, are you treating them as independent, or is there going to be relation between them? That's the first question. And the second question, I'll just throw it out there. I'm really fascinated by a line of research that shows that people misperceive other people's beliefs, especially beliefs about how much they hate them or something like this. So is it something that you can model as well within your model? So first about social independence. Mm-hmm.
No, we certainly have a link between personal and social belief, and we think that people update either one or the other, depending on how easy it is to update one or the other, to reduce the dissonance between them. So, and that's what we see also in our data, that basically people who start thinking about how much their social beliefs are different than personal beliefs, then tend to have, for whom that is more important, they tend to have more similar personal beliefs and social beliefs. So they think that others around them also believe the same thing. So I think this definitely, we have the link and we could model that. But sorry, you were saying, what was the other thing?
This about you touched on the independence, so there's social independence between the links. like whether belief networks and social links are independent of each other, or social links emerge from them.
Social links. So in this belief network model, the social link is really rudimentary modeled as just kind of the accuracy of my perception of another person's beliefs. And in this way, it is kind of it is possibly related to some kind of strength of connection or frequency of interaction with the other person, but nothing else. So that's still something that we should enrich in our model and have a more nuanced social link representations to really have something
including,
realistic.
for example, negative links. People you hate or people from the opposite group should influence you a different way, I would imagine.
Right, and we do have positive and negative links, but again, it's, for example, we don't really have that. That's maybe some proxy for how much we like or agree or disagree with the other person, but it's very rudimentary, very simplistic. I think a lot of your work could be fruitfully used.
YY, I think, go next. And I believe that YY will ask some overlapping questions with me, so I trust in YY.
YY.
Yeah, now I can unmute. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for awesome talk. Yeah, fascinating. And I'm wondering, the survey instrument that you introduced, the campus network, when can we use that?
Oh,
So
very
there was
soon.
like just one, question. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we should have I'm hoping to have a first version, very rudimentary paper on arXiv in a few weeks. And then, yeah, we are hoping to have it. And if you want it sooner, like we are happy to, Victor is always happy to talk about it. And it's an open source thing. It's programmed in O3. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll love to mess with
Yeah.
the instrument. So.
Absolutely. We'll be happy if people use this.
And a question is like, in a way, there is a kind of a belief layer, underlying belief layer, and there are like things that we can measure, right? And they can be very different. I think it's similar to what others have asked. But when we're thinking about the model, like what do you think is the most essential things to include? If you think about these two layers, and there are narratives, norms, and all kinds of things, right?
You mean of mental concepts or cognitive concepts, or of social network aspects?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm asking is like, we have a social network, we have an individual belief network, but then the social interactions are not at the belief level, but kind of a symbol level, right? So to get to that, like, what do you think are some of the most crucial elements?
Okay, many things come to mind, and I don't know if you're thinking about this, but right now our belief network is very simple. I like the Maddalena Vlasianu and their colleagues differentiation between kind of beliefs about facts and then social norms, and then I think it was actually like intentions or something like that. So I think that does make sense absolutely to differentiate some of these things, because I would bet that some like things like social norms are changing on a slower time scale, longer time scales than some other beliefs. And then when it comes to also how they spread and how they change in the social network, then also maybe it's the same underlying mechanism, but there is some temporal component that's different. And then what I really miss, of course, the whole richness of social network, the homophily, the balance, everything that you have in your model, that Christina was studying, all of this stuff. But then what I really miss and would love to somehow include is this, again, kind of norms and entrenched norms and institutions that I think constrain who can talk to whom and what can be expressed and what not. Just some kind of another layer of this change that that makes that just constrains the whole thing. You can call it maybe culture or institutional level. My dream is to have a multi-layer model where there is maybe one or more layers of beliefs, then there is some social network is updating, and then there is some more societal level variables that are constraining the whole thing. How to do it so that it's still simple and useful, that's maybe something you can solve.
Yeah, we are trying to. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mirta. We're a little over time. There was one more question that was posted on the chat. Maybe I could ask that if you have 2, 3 more minutes. Otherwise, we can. So the question was, could you clarify the difference between the adaptive and the fixed networks in the third, fourth paper?
So in the adaptive networks, we allowed for the edges to change, to become stronger or less strong over time, the links between the beliefs. And in the fixed network, the links are fixed. So edge weight 0.3 between all beliefs never changes. Whereas in adaptive networks, we allow that these links actually change depending on whether two beliefs change together over time in the same direction or not. That's all.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there is one more question, but it's a bit, maybe if it's possible, speaking up would be a good idea. Because it's a bit long and maybe I could read it though. If not, yeah. If understood correctly, you have focused on structural factors impacting resistance and resilience to update a specific belief. Do you have any expectation on belief-specific factors that could impact resistance or resilience to update them? I would expect that beliefs regarding core values e.g., human rights, equality, are harder to change than opinions towards general topics like prefer beach over pool. In this case, the resistance could be properly of the belief resulting from how critical are them for we operate and how our overall self depends on them. Sorry for have any misspelling, but yeah, I think
No,
yeah.
It's a great question. And yes, definitely. And so my dream is somehow to incorporate. Of course, there are many excellent theories. So why are some beliefs more or less easy to change? There is this identity, motivation based, and there's a whole mental model literature. There is like the importance of source of the information, the importance of trusting the information. I'm wondering, I think it's a challenge. Can we somehow use this network-based representation to integrate many of these perspectives? So for example, if there is something related to identity, political identity, is this basically just a strong cluster of beliefs in our belief system that is kind of connected to everything else that comes in, or it's maybe connecting to the way we evaluate incoming information? So could we basically model or some other such motivational factors or epistemological various frames that we have? Can we model that as a particular structure of beliefs, as a particular part of the network that's somehow more important than others because it's more tightly integrated, something with it that constrains then the other parts of the network?
Yeah, thank you so much. We've been a little over time, so maybe it's time to wrap up a little. But yeah, I did have a belief of questions that maybe I'll email one day, and if I can, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, thank you for the amazing talk, and thank you everyone for coming here and sitting. And yeah,
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you all.
thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mirta.
Bye.